Ever had an itch you can't scratch? What if that itch was inside your soul, inside your brain? Psychologists call that a mania, and here we go. Ablutomania can very much be considered the cleanest form of mania. That's because those who suffer from ablutomania are suffering from an excessive need to bathe, or in general, clean their bodies. This can mean that a person might not take just 1 or 2 showers a day, but several, potentially for long periods as well. As you can probably imagine, this form of mania is considered to be related to obsessive-compulsive disorder. It's been theorized that this particular form of mania might be triggered by someone feeling unclean or guilty for a specific act. This is known as the Macbeth effect, in reference to Shakespeare's Lady Macbeth, washing her hands obsessively as she hallucinates bloodstains from the victims of her murders. Like other forms of mania, even when a person who suffers from ablutomania isn't in the middle of cleaning themselves, they will still obsess over it. While, of course, keeping oneself clean is never a bad thing, people who suffer from ablutomania may end up spending so much time cleaning themselves that their personal or professional lives might suffer from it. Nymphomania, or hypersexuality, is known to many as a good old-fashioned sex addiction. Imagine a libido as insatiable as a squirrel on caffeine. In short, people with this condition can't control their sexual urges. But it's more than just that. People who suffer from this are obsessed with sex, in that they tend to think about sex all day. Literally, sex consumes their thoughts. It's like being a kid who just discovered the candy aisle. Everything looks delicious. People with this disorder tend to pleasure themselves several times a day and constantly watch porn. And perhaps the most well-known symptom of this disorder, nymphomaniacs tend to have a lot of sex with a variety of partners. Playing the STD roulette can land you in a bunch of hot water. While I'm sure some of this sounds fun on the surface, nymphomaniacs aren't looking to satisfy their sexual urges out of want, but instead out of compulsive need. In the aftermath of an encounter, someone with sex addiction might be depressed, anxious, or worse. While factors such as life trauma or brain chemical imbalances play a role if a person develops nymphomania, interestingly, certain drugs used to treat Parkinson's may also contribute to it. It's all fun and games until you accidentally swipe right on your uncle. Dermatillomania. Now we come to what is perhaps one of the most self-destructive forms of mania, in the form of dermatillomania. People who suffer from this type of mania will pick and tear at their own skin. Typically, a person with this ailment will pick at their hands or faces, and they do it pretty much anywhere on their body. They will often do this to the point of drawing blood and creating new wounds. This, of course, presents several problems. For one, if a person with dermatillomania consistently picks and scratches at an easily visible part of their body, they may feel ashamed and embarrassed. No doubt they will have to have some uncomfortable conversations with those around them. Worse yet, constant picking may lead to problems like skin lesions, tissue damage, and even worse, infections. In some cases, it can go even deeper than that. While people typically only pick at the top layer of the skin, hence the derma in dermatillomania, one woman had a case so severe that she picked and dug into herself until she exposed her carotid artery. Even though the act of picking at one's skin does indeed cause pain to the person suffering from dermatillomania, they also experience very brief bits of pleasure from the act itself. Sometimes people will pick at their skin for a moment at a time. In other cases, the sessions can last hours. Interestingly, methamphetamine abuse can cause a similar effect, causing zombie-like features as a person wallows in their addiction. Trichotillomania is a type of psychological impulse control disorder that causes people to literally pull their hair out. This is to say, they can't stop themselves from doing it. And it's not just their heads. People with this disorder will pull hair out from their legs, eyebrows, facial hair, and pretty much everywhere it grows. As for why people do it, for the most part, it's simply how some people deal with stress. So rather than doing other things that may even seem more destructive, people suffering from this type of mania use hair pulling as a way to direct their energy. Typically, when a hair is pulled, it actually releases a bit of dopamine, which makes the person suffering from trichotillomania feel good for a moment. The thing is, it can become so habit-forming that they might not even realize they're doing it. Before they know it, some have multiple bald patches, which can make them feel even more self-conscious. More self-conscious equals more hair pulling, and that's what psychologists call a negative feedback loop. Frustration and shame are the dominant emotions. It's estimated that about 1 in 50 people currently suffer from trichotillomania, and it typically first shows up between the ages of 9 and 13. Egomania can be summed up by a joke from comedian Al Lubell. They say in order to love others, you must first learn to love yourself. Well, I'm just not finished yet. Egomaniacs are completely obsessed with themselves, much like people who suffer from narcissistic personality disorder. For an egomaniac, they believe that they are basically the best thing since air, no matter how little they have actually done to earn that feeling of entitlement. They believe they are better than everyone and should be treated better than everyone, and because of who they are, regular rules don't apply to them. As such, egomaniacs never see things from another person's perspective and can even get angry if someone disagrees with them. Though under this bravado, most egomaniacs are also deeply insecure and filled with self-loathing. Because of these mixed feelings, people with egomania are often susceptible to addictions as a way to deal with their own negative feelings. As a result of their own mania, egomaniacs can get frustrated that the world doesn't or refuses to see them the way they see themselves. It's been speculated that things like social media have contributed to feelings of egomania because, at any moment, a person can and will post literally any type of content to get the attention they crave. Kleptomania is a form of mania you've probably heard of before. It's essentially an impulse control disorder that causes people to steal things. It's not that people who suffer from this want to steal things. You understand, it's that they can't stop themselves from doing so. A person with kleptomania typically walks into a store with zero desire to steal, and then the moment hits them. They're filled with nervous anticipation before the act. Then, once they steal the item, typically something they don't need or holds little value, the kleptomaniac is filled with a sense of euphoria as their brain rewards them with dopamine. The thrill of getting away with it fades into an emotional crash and a pocket full of trinkets. So, after stealing the item, as soon as the high ends, they are typically filled with the feelings of shame mixed with anxiety. Keep in mind that theft is still a crime, so there is a chance that their impulse may result in a criminal record. It's believed that kleptomania affects about 0.3% to 0.6% of the population. At the same time, it's estimated that about 4 or 5% of shoplifters are kleptomaniacs. Pyromania is one of the most dangerous forms of impulse control disorders, due to fire being in the mix. This is because some people with this condition cannot stop themselves from setting fires. Like with other ICDs, impulse control disorders, a person with pyromania will feel the build-up tension within themselves before the act, followed by a sense of extreme happiness and bliss once the flame appears before them. However, even beyond setting fires, pyromaniacs love watching fires. To that end, it's not uncommon for pyromaniacs to become firefighters because they get to see fires up close as a profession. Studies have shown that symptoms of this type of mania typically show in adolescence or early childhood. In one case, a child as young as 3 years old was diagnosed as a pyromaniac. Of the cases diagnosed pyromania, it's been found out that the condition is more present in males than in women. Of course, this form of mania comes with a host of problems, including the danger to both people and property. Because pyromania is an impulse control disorder, the person setting the fire might not realize the harm until it's too late. Even if everything goes well and no one gets hurt, the person with pyromania typically feels shame or guilt for what they have done. This may lead to other addictions. Toxicomania is a form of mania that you may not have heard of, but it's one that a lot of people suffer from. In short, it's very akin to drug addiction, and that people who suffer from this form of mania are unable to control their impulse to consume drugs. But it's also more than that. People who suffer from toxicomania are also unable to stop themselves from ingesting various poisons. Like with other forms of mania, in some cases, people with toxicomania may not realize that what they are doing is bad for them until it's too late. They just get the urge, feel that rush before it happens, and then, before they know it, they are filled with regret or shame for their actions. It's not that they want to use drugs or ingest poisonous materials, it's that they seemingly have to. As a result, this form of mania comes with the added risk that a person may overdose on a particular drug, causing any number of potential health issues. Or worse, they will consume a poison or drug that leads to their own death, or potentially the death of someone else. Imagine having to decide how much bleach you could drink to calm your demons, but not hurt you this time. If so, you are not alone, and there is help. Start with a therapist. You are loved more than you think.